Ready, Patrick? You're
My
good
name-
to go.
My name is Joe Strandell, and it's time to press play. All right, today is a special day. We have some folks who are creating the Hyperloop, and my friend Paul Karpenko is involved. And Paul, I was wondering if you could just start off real quick, and for those who've never heard of you, explain what it is you do and how you're connected to this, and then we can get into the questions of Hyperloop and what this is all about. So take it away, Paul.
Oh, thank you. Joe, it's an honor to be on your show. I love your show, and it's great that we're collaborating this one time on something exciting. My name is Paul Karpenko, and I'm running a small startup lab called Solaris Labs. And basically, we are an incubator for next generational technologies. And about a year ago, something really tripped me up, and it was the Hyperloop. And Elon Musk has been on my radar ever since he came out with the Tesla in his early days. And the Hyperloop was really something that tripped up the whole transportation industry about a year ago with this white paper. And I was following the competition they had in Texas, which we'll get into a little bit later. And I came across these two gentlemen, actually from the Santa Barbara area. And if you guys want to introduce yourselves and where are you guys going to school, or who you guys involved with, and basically what's your involvement with the Hyperloop?
Right. Hi, my name is Richard Behill. I'm a fourth-year student at UCSB studying mechanical engineering and material science. I first got involved in the Hyperloop competition last June. Thanks. I'm the PR lead for our loop. So basically, my job has been to get everyone inspired to work on the project. We got some people together over the internet, and we're making a pod for the competition. Yeah, so that's pretty much my introduction, I guess.
Yeah, hi, I'm Trevor Fritz. I'm a fourth-year mechanical engineering student at UCSB as well. And I'm the leader of the UC Santa Barbara Hyperloop team. So, started getting involved around the same time as Richard. Of course, we didn't actually get to start actually doing any work until school started, because our team is all students. They had the benefit of being able to be graded over a bunch of professionals over the internet. But yeah, so we just saw the project come out, immediately gained interest. Our school's been very supportive of us, and we're going to be building a pod for the competition as well.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I guess we can kind of start out with what kind of drew you first into the Hyperloop? When did you guys first hear of it? And what is kind of what's been your kind of initial take of the Hyperloop?
Well, I've been a huge fan of SpaceX and Tesla and pretty much everything Elon Musk does for a few years now. So when I heard he was announcing the Hyperloop competition, pretty much right away, I thought, that's awesome. I want to get involved in that in some way. And at the time, I actually didn't know that UCSB was going to be having a Hyperloop team, so I went and got involved with our loop. And then Trevor and I were actually talking a little while later, and he was like, "Hey, UCSB's having a Hyperloop team." And
I actually invited it onto the team. He was like,
nice.
Actually, conflict of interest. I'd have my own team. Yeah. I read the white paper in 2013 when it came out. So as soon as I saw that there was a Hyperloop pod competition, I was like, immediately, it's like, holy crap, this has to be a thing. And then I sort of just asked our advisor if maybe it could be made into a capstone senior design project, and now we're up to 21 people, 20 engineers all working on it together, and I think it's the largest capstone project UCSB's ever done, actually, so pretty exciting.
Wow, that's incredible.
What's the white paper?
The white paper was sort of the concept proposal for the Hyperloop. That was the one that made the name Hyperloop something that people could talk about and know what it meant. And that was released in 2013 as a response to the California high-speed rail train design, which a lot of people are really unhappy with.
Because that's supposed to come out in 2029, or?
Yeah, if they can raise the $100 billion that are needed to build it.
Okay. So you guys were in this competition, or like how? Talk about the competition and why. Well, first of all, before we get into the competition, why Elon Musk? Like why are you guys? I mean, there's like different other projects that you could be working on. So why are you interested in Musk?
Well, Elon Musk is really the god that all engineers sort of worship at the moment. Not to say that we think that everything he says is untouchable. I mean, his original proposal for the Hyperloop was it would be levitated on air bearings like an air hockey table, and now we're going to be using magnetic levitation. I believe his team is as well. He founded SpaceX and Tesla Motors. Both companies were just sort of made as a experiment to disrupt the industries that they entered, and now they're leading those industries, or at least doing very well in those industries, much better than they thought it would.
Did you guys ever see that thing with the Nevada issue?
Oh,
You know what that
yeah, the solar.
Yeah, so Warren Buffett's monopoly takes control over the energy of Nevada, and Elon wants to come in with this solar city. Him and his cousins run it. I think he's just on the board, right? And chairman, and so there's an interesting debate that was going on all last year. I didn't hear about until Bloomberg, and apparently, Solar City wants to come in and give cheaper prices to people, but this monopoly is going to raise the prices for the people who want the panels, which seems unfair because why not use the sun? Nevada has like more than 300 days of sunshine a year. Why not utilize that? What do you guys think about that? This whole Warren Buffett versus Elon Musk thing.
Well, I think, obviously, people should be moving in the direction of renewable energy, and solar is certainly a great technology. I mean, there are some issues in terms of storage and so on, but solar is fantastic, especially in Nevada, and especially if it's cost competitive, it should absolutely be something that people are pushing for. Now that said, I don't know the exact details of the situation. I know there was I guess, an issue brought up over what China's doing regarding solar production and dumping in the United States, and so I don't know the economics required to really make an informed decision on that.
I only read an article about it recently, but I know that they're sort of what was it? Solar Cities. I think it's Solar Cities suing because they're basically calling shenanigans and saying, two of the leading advisors of the governor in Nevada are executives or high up in the energy company in Nevada. So it seems like it's kind of corrupt at the moment. I mean, it's going to be pending any kind of proof that they can actually pick up. But I mean, I feel like any kind of attempt to disrupt the spread of solar or any renewable energy is sort of just digging ourselves in a hole.
Yeah.
Just putting on the brakes when you don't need to.
I mean, what do you guys think about like Warren Buffett, $300 billion and Berkshire Hathaway? He's an intelligent investor, obviously. Do you think there's lessons we can learn from him too? Like, what is there any value that I mean, obviously there's this issue with Nevada, but like, does Warren Buffett still have merit?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for people who invest large amounts of money in the economy, and even if a guy like Warren Buffett might not be obvious, like what is he contributing to society in terms of like Elon Musk is coming in with the solar panels and electric cars and rockets, whereas Warren Buffett basically just moves money around. But at the same time, there is some merit in people who are able to do that and able to fund a lot of ventures and whatnot. So I think it's a very nuanced situation, and I don't really know. I certainly don't have all the information needed to make an accurate judgment on that.
Yeah, I think I read The Intelligent Investor, and one point that is strong is being able to harness your emotions, because it's easy to get swept up into tech and science and the excitement of new stuff, whereas the intelligent investor knows, that's speculation, and it's not like maybe 5% of a very sliver, he says, is to have, a part of your portfolio, the speculative part, but Yeah, I think there's a balance, but going back kind of to the event, talk about the competition. Like what was that like?
Well, it was, it was just awesome. I mean, there was something like 120 universities / teams there, from representing 20 different countries. And I'm not sure if all of those were there. I know there was one team from Belgium who didn't make it, but they webcast it, I think. But yeah, I was, our booth is right next to a team from Germany, and then, across the way was a team from Australia. And all of them were just really excited to be here and bounce ideas off of each other. I mean, nobody seemed very protective over their ideas. It was super open source and collaborative, and sort of exactly what I hoped that the event would be.
So you guys kind of came to the competition with a paper or a design that you guys had blueprinted or architected, and what was in the design? What did it take to get in the competition?
So initially, what it took was a preliminary design briefing, which is where basically so you had about 1,200 teams sign up initially, and then some teams submitted their preliminary design briefing, which is sort of like it lets SpaceX know, like, okay, here's what we have in mind. We don't have all the details worked out yet, but this is the general idea. And then of that, 100 or so people got invited to the weekend in Texas, and by that time we have to have our final design report. So fully spec'd out, basically like, here's our pod. And just to go back for a second on like how the design weekend was from the perspective of our loop, it was actually it was really great because everyone who was there had never met before in person.
Oh wow!
So we had one of our guys, Amir. He came in from India. He flew like 26
Wow!
hours.
So your team's all over the world.
All over the world. We never
Cool.
stopped working. We're from 14 different countries, and so
Wow!
the Texas event was the first time that a lot of us met up in person. It was really a great thing. So, and another thing is that we had our booth at the event, and people would walk by and say, "Oh, it's our loop. It's our loop." And I was like, "How does everyone know?"
What does that mean? Oh, that's your name. Our
yeah.
loop. Oh.
So I was.
Why that name?
Well, it was originally, so a lot of our team members come from Reddit. That's sort of where we recruited from. So we were initially going to call ourselves Reddit Loop, but then I thought, well, I don't know if we want to get, like, it's a little...
You might as well call it Twitter Loop.
Yeah. So
Trademarks issues.
So we figured we'll just change it to our Loop. So that's the name. So I was surprised by how everyone seemed to know who we are and they liked what we were doing. And then it turns out all these other Hyperloop teams, they would Google like Hyperloop design competition, and our loop was the only team that was actually publishing our work and putting it out there for everyone to see and to use. So I guess a lot of teams used our work for inspiration, and it was really neat to see that we've had such an effect on the competition.
You were the only one who put your work out there?
Yeah, well, so our loop is it's an open source collaborative online project. So basically anyone on the internet can join, but the flip side of that is that everything we work on is public, so everyone can see it. So we're really coming at the competition from a different angle than everyone else. The other teams, most of them are university teams, so they're teams of students who are trying to make a pod and do the competition. With our loop, it's a little different because we're coming at it from the angle of basically let's get the internet to do this, and let's see how many people we can get in on it. And so far, it's been great. I mean, over the course of our loop, we have over 300 team members. Right now, we have about 140 who are regularly active, and we always recruit more. As if we need to get something done, we'll be like, okay, well, let's find someone who knows how to do it, and then we'll get it done. So that's been a big advantage for our loop.
I like how Musk puts his designs out, right? He puts his patents out, and there was this meme, he was talking with Colbert, and he was saying, why do you put your patents out? Well, because, if we're all in a sinking ship, and someone designs a bucket that gets the water out, then it would be a good idea to copy that bucket design idea and help.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, how long do you want to keep bucketing yourself out of maybe it's time to move to a new ship? Mars? My brother's obsessed with Mars.
It's too far away for me. It's not even on my radar.
He just sent me this screenshot. They got new Wi-Fi, and the router is now called Mars.
Cool.
But so you guys were a part of 300 teams?
At the competition?
Yeah.
It was 120, I think.
Yeah.
Around 100, 120.
And now there's only 23 left, so only 23 have made it to the final round.
And you guys
22?
22 student teams in our loop.
Gotcha.
And you guys
Wait, 22 student teams and then Hyperloop. You're really the only public group.
We're the
That
only
made
remaining
it.
non-student team.
Wow.
We actually won an award signed by Elon Musk for best non-student team. So
Cool. You should have brought it in.
Oh,
We
yeah.
admire it.
I actually don't have it. I think it's in Canada right now. Either that or San Francisco.
So
Our
do you
team
guys
is
have like a
spread.
leadership team, like somebody who kind of was like some of the main people? Are they based here in town or?
Yeah, so we have various sub teams in our team. We have like the mechanical engineering team, we have aerospace or the aero team, we have software, we have PR, we have, and then all those teams we sort of have like very hierarchical structure. So we have a good workflow and well designed or well delegated tasks. So we're not really based anywhere in particular. We have a higher population density in California, but we're still pretty spread out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have maybe a dozen or so people in the LA area, and then maybe I don't know a similar amount in San Francisco.
Wow. And the student teams, do you guys also have like a kind of a hierarchy or like a main engineer or main lead programmer designer? You guys also have a hierarchy?
Pretty close to that. So because our capstone senior project structure requires that all teams are teams of 5, the way that we sort of organized it is we have one team of 5, which is my team, which is structures and integration, and I'm leading that team. Then there's the aerodynamics and levitation is another team of 5, and that's also mechanical engineers. And we have a team of computer engineers, another team of 5. It's a team of 5 of computer engineers, and a team of 5 electrical engineers. And electrical engineers do mostly like power electronics. Computers do sensors and controls and navigation. So yeah, so we sort of have like one team leader for each of those groups, and we sort of correspond with each other. But that being said, I mean, the aerodynamics and that levitation team is currently working on the centering system. I mean, we're all just mechanical engineers, really. The titles sort of stopped meaning anything.
Okay, you become interdisciplinary. Like whoever's like lacking in a certain area, you kind of all cover.
Yeah, exactly. So when we're working on eddy current brakes right now, which is like magnetic brakes to slow us down on make sure we don't crash. That's sort of had to form an interdisciplinary team of mechanical engineers and electrical engineers because we're not all good at everything. So, but yeah, sort of sub teams get formed amongst other ones.
Paul was saying that you are doing it with ball bearings or what?
It's magnetic bearings, right? You guys use magnetic bearings?
Yeah.
Can you describe that a little bit more? So basically, the Hyperloop is basically a tube that takes away air pressure, or not. There's air pressure in there, but there's no air resistance. That basically uses a vacuum and bearings, right? Similar to the high-speed train in Japan. And can you guys describe maybe a little bit more about the actual mechanics, how it works?
Yeah. So we're actually using a different type of maglev. It's not our design. It's been around for a while. We're actually using the design by ArcsPax, which is the company designing a lot of the engines for the competition. But it's inductive magnetic levitation, which means that normally with maglev trains they have an active magnetic track, which means you have to have electromagnets in the track. It's very, very expensive per mile of track, as you would imagine. One of the benefits of inductive magnetic levitation is it has basically all of the technology centered in the engines on the pod. So they induce currents in just an aluminum subtrack, which you float over. And it's not even a magnetic material. I mean, aluminum isn't magnetic, but you induce currents which create magnetic fields, which end up imposing your own, and you levitate on just some conductive surface, and it ends up being much, much more, cheap per mile. Even, kind of similar to the cost of just train tracks, period.
So you guys were qualified in the top 20 now?
Top 23. Yeah.
So where does it go from here?
So now it goes to the final competition. So this summer, at the SpaceX headquarters in LA, they're building a 1 mile test track. So the top 23 teams are all going to build the pod and to test it at the track and see like whose goes the fastest, and look at varying metrics of performance and compete.
Who was number one? Or does that matter?
Right, at the design weekend, the winner was MIT.
Well, the student team winner was MIT.
The student team winner was MIT.
Why did they win first place?
I guess honestly, they had a pretty good their levitation mechanism was fairly, impressive. It was and pretty new. They used linear magnetic induction, whereas a lot of other teams were using circular ones where you have like spinning engines essentially. MIT's made it so that they would be able to levitate at like 10 miles an hour, which is better than any other magnetic linear induction motors we're getting.
So that helps in braking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good for braking and levitation, as I understand it.
So they're not using artifacts?
Mm-mm.
Huh.
But yeah, I guess also looking at the team, it's a team of 25 graduate students at MIT. So, and I think they're all doing it pretty much full time. They've said that they're going to be spending 40 hours a week on this per person.
Is that what you aren't going to do that?
I won't say that we won't,
Uh,
but I like so far it hasn't been that much. I mean, we're all students and doing other things too.
Kind of hard when you're at UCSB and right on the beach, everything.
Well, yeah, that's one factor. I mean, the other factor is this isn't our only thing. We're also taking other classes.
Is this part of a class?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
So
our
capstone
senior
project. Okay, senior project.
He has a capstone like senior year project as well. They're working for
FLIR. We're designing
Right.
a thermal imaging system.
yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
So would you say those two things are kind of like your big, where your attention's at, the Hyperloop and the Flare?
Yeah, I would say so. Well, that and classes would be the big things. Right
Still have to pass classes. I'm going to graduate in June, so.
Yeah.
Is there, so we're talking about Elon Musk and his ideas, and is there anyone else, when I say successful and significant, this person comes to mind? And if so, who and why?
Good question.
Well, I mean, our professors like to bring up the example of the Wright brothers. You know, I mean, that's sort of an old example, but, you know, like, one of the things that, like a lot of the teams, when you looked at their designs, were sort of, they made them pretty complex. They have really like active centering systems where you have to have like a computer making sure you're centered on the track, or you know, they were already building in to have like 14 chairs on board the pod, and then there were teams like us who were sort of like, well, this competition is really just about proving the viability of the Hyperloop concept, and we don't really need to tack on 12 chairs to be able to prove that's still going to work. So we sort of went for a really simple design that we'd be able to build ourselves, because that sort of makes it cheaper if we don't have to outsource work. And that was one of the reasons that SpaceX said that they cited that they chose certain teams, was that they looked like they actually had designs that would be realistic to build before the competition, which is slated to be in August, but everyone was expecting it to be June until an email that we got like this morning.
So whoever wins, does SpaceX take it over, or whose company is it? Is it your company? So the idea is just out there.
Yeah, so it's
And
all open
everyone's-
source.
Okay,
We don't actually have a company. This is just a school project at the moment.
right.
I mean, I say just a school project, but yeah, it's SpaceX and like Elon Musk have stated all along the way that they don't actually plan on having their own Hyperloop, and which is kind of funny because you all see in the media, it's like, you know, because now they're building the test track in Hawthorne, and like everyone's jumping
So
on
are
it.
they
Like,
lying, or?
no.
Well-
So they're funding the competition, but
Why
they're
don't they want to work on it?
So the Hyperloop itself is a very vague idea with a lot of areas of criticism. A lot of people are extremely skeptical of the idea. I was skeptical at first, and still am. Have a healthy amount of skepticism for it.
What's that for? Why?
For the Hyperloop. Well, there's a few main things. One is that there's the possibility of a painful decompression event inside the pod where suddenly the passengers are exposed to a vacuum. But assuming they can design around that,
That's painful.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
no worse than an airplane, though.
well, it depends on how pressurized the tube is. If you're talking about 1,000 pascals, if they're 1% of an atmosphere of
It's
pressure.
only like a few more pascals than if you're at high altitude.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want to get sucked out of a plane either.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're on 6
You
months
don't
right
hear
now,
that happening
but-
that often.
That's
Yeah,
true, that's
I
true.
mean, they
So-
still say that flying is the safest way to
Although
travel.
there was a plane that crashed here not too long ago.
A plane.
Yeah, it was a small plane, I think, that crashed in Santa Barbara. Not to bring up bad news, but sorry, where were you going? So you were talking about you were skeptical.
Oh yeah. So I guess from an engineering perspective, and I mean I'm only 21, so this could be naive, but what I see being a major problem for the Hyperloop are thermal stresses. As the day goes by, you have the day and the night cycle. You have temperature. It cycles, and I did the math a while ago, and it turns out if you have a temperature difference of 20 degrees for I think it was a 500-mile track, that's going to be, and now if you imagine that all just one thing, it's going to expand and contract by on the order of a few hundred yards. So that's going to have to be compensated for somehow. And there's two things they can do. Either they can allow the expansion and contraction, so now they have moving parts, and that introduces logistical complexity that might be a challenge when working with a near vacuum tube. Or if they were to constrain the tube, then now they have thermal stresses because it's going to want to expand. And this might not seem like the most relevant problem, but actually in some places like Australia in particular, where you have the day and the nights that have a huge temperature difference sometimes, they actually get train tracks that will buckle under these thermal stresses. So I see that as a potential challenge, not something that's insurmountable. I mean, I can imagine there being ways of connecting a tube, maybe it slides in, you have like a few points where it's able to move. But I see thermal stresses and also seismic activity as being a problem, especially here in California. I mean, if there's an earthquake and the vacuum tube ruptures, and then a bunch of air comes rushing in, and you have an 800-mile-an-hour pod just smacking into this air, it probably wouldn't be very comfortable. But all those things, they're sort of concerns that are out there that haven't been addressed yet. And really, the nature of the competition is to have teams suggest ideas and solutions, and to refine the Hyperloop idea. So in other words, Elon Musk, he came up with this idea, but he's busy with Tesla and SpaceX, and he's got other things going on. But he wants someone to do it. And so the competition's really about, okay, let's figure out how do we do it. And as far as making a Hyperloop, so our loop hasn't actually patented any of our designs or anything. We're totally open source. But there has been talk of potentially moving forward after the competition. Nothing certain yet, but we have a few people on the team who would be interested in doing something like that. And there are also a few startups at the moment that are closely working with the competition, Hyperloop Technologies. And so it is likely that something will come out of it. So
Definitely.
Yeah, Hyperloop transportation technologies was the other one.
that's right.
Are they building the tubes themselves out of metal? So you see in the commercials, like it's like glass, like it just looks cool. It's going. I mean, is it metal or what's the material? What's the tube actually made out of?
Test track is made out of steel.
Steel. Okay.
Yeah, I think those the renderings have the clear tube. I think that's mainly to see what's going on. Although that's a good question regarding materials. That's something I was thinking about as well in terms of the large scale production of this thing. I think they would probably be going with steel.
Probably. It makes the most sense. I mean, when you have cyclic loading on anything, steel is typically the way to go because it gets that endurance curve and it can pretty much go on for infinite cycles.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas anything else is eventually going to break.
And what do you guys think about solar panels powering the Hyperloop? How is that? Because that's been suggested as well.
Well, I think
Is
the way it's advertised is a little bit silly. They say the system can power itself if you line the whole top of it with solar panels. That goes for anything, really. I mean, if you put a bunch of solar panels out there, yeah, each one gives you a few hundred watts per square meter. You can power anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little silly. I mean, it's not wrong.
I think the point was that you wouldn't need to have a bunch of extra real estate in order to have solar power farms. Like you could just put it on top of the tubes,
Yeah.
which is better than if you have any other high energy operation that isn't taking up a lot of area already. You would have to put the solar panels somewhere if you wanted to have clean energy.
You probably can't put like
That's
a bunch
fair
of
point.
solar panels on a train.
Yeah,
or
right.
something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you build
Well,
a roof over the train.
You could build a pretty cheap little structure with solar panels.
That'll look cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
What's your guys' favorite book?
Hmm.
Are you into the engineering textbooks? Are you more novels, nonfiction, fiction?
Lately, I've definitely been into the engineering textbooks, but
I love those too.
Yeah.
yeah, well, I haven't had a lot of time to read other things. Let me think about that for a little bit.
I mean, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I don't really, I don't have self-control when it comes to reading. So when I start reading a book, I finish it within the next few days because I just get addicted to it.
That's a good thing. I thought you were saying,
Oh yeah, no.
I don't read.
I mean, I mostly choose not to read to protect my grades. But that being said, actually the last book I read was my aunt gave me the book Relativity by Albert Einstein as a birthday gift. It was 2 months late, and I don't think she knows enough about relativity to make a relativity joke by sending me a book that late or something. You know, I read I understood probably at least 30% of it. So.
What about a movie?
Oh, sorry. Can I answer?
Oh yeah, what were we gonna say?
Okay, sorry. I actually thought of an answer. So my favorite actual physical book is I have this astronomy book from, I think it's 1916 or something. It belonged to my grandpa. And in this book, it was written before Einstein's ideas of relativity really caught on. Now, one of the problems back in the day was if you look at Newton's law of gravity, it doesn't explain the orbit of Mercury. It's a little bit off. It sort of processes in this strange way. And in the book, it actually talks about, instead of having so Newton's law is 1 over square root of the radius between two objects is gravitational force. So in the book it says, well, maybe it's not 1 over r to the second power, maybe it's 2.00 something. And it was really, I was reading through it, and it was fascinating to see the historical perspective of what people used to make of reality before Einstein figured out a large part of it. But then favorite book in terms of content itself would probably be Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I mean, it's a classic. It really shows that some things never change, and I love the Stoic outlook. It's been very formative for me.
Do you guys have any feelings about the new news of gravitational waves confirmed by Albert Einstein?
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Why is that exciting?
So from a theoretical standpoint, it's great because one of the results of relativity. So relativity really it's only like 2 or 3 statements about reality. But when you do the math on those statements, really weird things happen. Like if you say, for instance, that no matter how fast you're going, the speed of light is always going to look like it's moving the same. Well, now if you imagine 2 objects going at different speeds, they're going to disagree on the speed that light's going, and they're going to disagree on the speed that time passes. So now suddenly space and time become flexible. And if you do all the math, one of the things with the statement that mass curves space and time is that, okay, well, now if you move things around and they're moving space and time, you're going to get waves of gravity. And gravity waves, it's an accurate name, but in the public perception, it's a bit of a misnomer because people think of gravity and they think of falling. What it really is, it should be called like geometry waves, but that doesn't really get, because there's a time wave aspect of it as well.
Space-time waves.
So the way to think of it is like space-time waves. Yeah. If you imagine looking in a funhouse mirror and seeing how your body distorts, now imagine you're standing in a crowd and people all around you start distorting, but in real life, and that distortion sort of passes as a wave through the crowd. And at the same time is sort of waves too. And that's really what a gravity wave is. And it's extremely, not only is it profound that Einstein predicted these things like 100 years ago and they're just now being measured because they're very small, but it's profound because what it really means is that geometry, Euclidean geometry that assumes a flat plane and all that, it doesn't actually exist. It's a figment of the imagination. So I think back in high school, I memorized, I think it was like 400 or 500 digits of pi to win a competition, but
Wow.
I won $314. So,
Wow.
yeah, per hour is a good investment. But looking back now, most of those digits are wrong because in reality, if you have a circle in space and time, and if you have some background disturbance in the gravitational field, what that means is that circle is going to be constantly warping ever so slightly. So after the first few dozen digits of pi, maybe even less, the numbers would be oscillating. So pi as a constant doesn't actually really have physical meaning. So there's a lot of things like that to think about in terms of gravity waves and how it challenges, or not, it challenges our intuitive notion of how the universe works, but it also confirms the theoretical notion of how space and time interact with matter and energy. So it's pretty exciting.
So, Life of Pi is a no-go.
Well,
Are you guys into movies?
Oh, yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
Well, I'm a little biased right now because I actually saw Deadpool over the weekend, so that's sort of
Saw it yesterday.
it was something else.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I could
What do you
objectively.
think? Why you like it?
It was just I don't know. It was just so. It's one of those things.
It broke all the conventions of
Yeah.
film.
It was something that it broke all the conventions, and yet it stayed true to itself.
Mhm.
And it was a project that had been years in the making, and in many ways, like a lot of people thought, there's no way they can make a Deadpool movie. Like it's just so over the top, so just, but they did, and it turned out just they really didn't cut corners on it. They stayed true to the story, and yeah, I liked it a lot. But,
What? Going back a little bit to the competition.
Yeah. Sorry.
What superpowers did you guys figure out you have? Because obviously, like a project like this is interdisciplinary. A lot of people work together, and you actually apply what you're learning in school. Did you guys figure out any kind of special skills you have, whether it's vision, actually going on a whiteboard and just hypothesizing all kinds of equations, drawing, maybe modeling? What kind of skills did you guys figure out did you kind of cultivate during the competition? And how did the competition help bring those about?
I think one of the big ones is like last minute concept generation.
I think all young people gotta share that.
Yeah,
last minute procrastination or whatever.
Yeah, I remember one point in general, this was like a week before our final design report was due, and that was due about a week, 2 weeks before the competition. And one of our team members was looking through the rules for the competition, and they're like, it turns out you actually you need a service propulsion system. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're not levitating and you're stopped, you still have some way of moving around on like an electric motor or something, like an electric car. And we kind of thought that was actually optional all the way up until that point when someone's like, no, this is required. It's like, oh, okay. So, well, I guess we have the weekend to do this, to make this whole new subsystem. So we did it, and it seems like it's going to work.
So you're saying that this summer you're gonna go into the finals. Are you guys gonna win?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
Without a shadow. Better way to say it. And then so when will the average person what's the stats on like how I heard you can get from LA to SF in like 20 minutes or like what is that what it is?
I think it's 40 minutes.
well, I mean, a lot of it's still speculative at this point.
Of course, I mean, that's assuming you're going like the speed of sound the whole time.
I mean, I've heard anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, about half an hour.
Yeah.
And it might be 2020 that we see it or
Well,
It'll be way later than that, to be frank.
Oh,
To be quite
really?
honest, right now I just know with Secretary Fox of the Department of Transportation was speaking at the competition, and somebody asked him the same question, like, when do you think we're going to see one of these built? And he's like, honestly, it's impossible to say. I mean, that's one of the things about, like, in the design of sort of like the United States government is it's sort of made to go slow so that nothing happens too quickly and some bad things happen. So, with something that's like this large scale of mass transportation that's going to affect so many people and undoubtedly have a lot of like a large hand from the government, there's going to be a lot of red tape to cut through before it actually gets built and people trust it.
Another thing is that, so the Hyperloop idea, it's more than just, a track from LA to San Francisco. It's really answering the question of, is it possible to create this fifth mode of transportation? Because right now we have cars, planes, boats, and
trains. Is
Yeah,
it just kind of
so-
like Train 2.0?
Well, in a
I
way.
feel like it's an upgrade to a train, honestly.
Yeah, but fifth mode of transportation sounds cool. But
Kind of like what Uber was to taxis, or just it's like the next evolution.
yeah, although I would say it's definitely an evolutionary change. I would say it's a revolutionary change as opposed to an evolutionary increment in technology, because there really is something to be said for having that vacuum tube. I mean, that's the main problem.
Yeah, I guess so.
It does resemble a train in that it's a ground-based transportation system,
And
but
fixed to a
Kind
track.
of
Based on
monorail.
yeah,
Could it be underground?
sure. I mean,
So yeah, I mean, it could be underground. The reason that the proposal is to build it on pylons above ground to make it safe for economic activity, or economic, stupid, seismic activity.
okay.
Because if you build it underground, plates shift. Now the track is in two places.
Well, I do know. I mean, they do maybe like have a section in the tunnel or something. I don't know. I was actually talking with my uncle about this today, but my grandpa worked on the Trans Bay tube up in San Francisco that BART goes.
The BART, yeah.
Yeah. So I know that's got to be waterproof. I mean, it's underground under the water, but so if you can put a train, I'm just saying, you make a tunnel like that, and then you can put a Hyperloop tube in there, have some seismic stuff in between the tube and the main Hyperloop tube. They can make it work if you want to. The main logistical challenge is creating such a large vacuum tube. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have leaks every now and again, and that's unavoidable, frankly.
Yeah.
So your grandfather was building a tube thing in San.
Yeah, so the BART, the train, it goes under the bay for miles there. My grandpa was involved in the construction, and he would he actually used to ride his bike through the tunnel before the train was put in. So
Wow.
it's sort of like a Hyperloop.
Runs in the family, I guess.
Yeah.
Can people come to the competition and coming up here? Is it this year, August 2016?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can people come to that? Is it public invited?
From what I understand, it seems like it's going to be open to the public. I think that's what it was made to look like.
Yeah, I haven't heard
Road trip?
anything, but
That's not a road trip. You just have to wake up early that morning.
Yeah.
Where's it at?
It's going to be in Hawthorne, near LAX.
we actually went down to the factory.
Yeah,
So
we
it's not too far.
Yeah,
No.
I just drove down to the factory for a day.
Yeah.
It's a really cool place.
Did you guys get a tour?
Yeah.
From Elon?
Not from Elon.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of busy. Now I read his book. Did you guys read that one? The Quest for. It's like
Fantastic Future.
Yeah.
The Quest for the Fantastic
the
Future.
new one is definitely worth checking out. Just kind of seeing, the story of like how he got to where he is. And the interesting part to me was when he was building the spaceships in the islands. Just kind of like they were like camping out, and he had this private jet that he would fly parts to because like it was too expensive.
It sounded like it was like a scramble startup at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was just this, like just they had his interns were flying his jet to Texas to test the thing. They're like just like crazy. It just sounded like it was crazy to start.
Yeah.
You know, it started even crazier than that. Before Elon decided to make his own rockets, he actually went over to Russia and tried to buy some ICBMs. from
Yeah.
there.
Right, and they rejected him. They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh no, you boy."
Apparently they were messing with
Go
him.
away.
They said they would sell it to him, and then he went back, and I guess they raised the price or something.
And
So
then
he was
they-
like, "Fine, I'll make my own rocket tomorrow."
Right, on the flight back, that's when they like do a little concept or something, which is just like crazy.
It's a pretty
Yeah.
hilarious twist of fate now because SpaceX is now creating the Dragon V2, which is going to be, remove America. Well, theoretically will help remove America's reliance on Russian technology to get into space.
And the
So-
V2 are the ones that land.
Exactly.
Well, in theory, they're
so
designed to be
it
able
does
to land
have
forcibly.
Well, no, they do land.
Yeah, the first
It's
few
designed
launches,
to.
though, they do have the Super Draco engines around the Dragon that'll allow them to land propulsively with the accuracy of a helicopter anywhere in the world, in theory. But there's some safety concerns with that. I mean, it's sort of an unproven technology. They're doing testing on it. But the first few launches, they're going to use parachutes to descend, like traditional capsules. But it's definitely something, so that's just going to be at first as they prove the technology. Because if they're even when they do land propulsively, they're going to have that backup parachute anyways. So,
Yeah.
Although there is a point where you get close enough and the backup parachute isn't actually safe to use. But yeah.
We're probably gonna run. We're gonna wrap things up with just maybe a few more questions. But is there anything, Paul, you wanted to kind of wrap up, say, finish?
Yeah. So, do you guys think that this type of technology is going to open up more room for even other types of innovation in transportation? For example, an idea that I had for a long time is something I call the magno bubble, which is just basically this bubble that is magnetically connected to a digital roadway. It has basically magnetic electricity streaming through a roadway, and basically kind of like a levitating bubble. Because I always think of like basically the bubble. I think is a great idea. It's just a generic type of vehicle, no cars. And do you guys think that like this type of streaming, this this work toward this destination of this next generational technology, do you guys think like this will open up more room for things like the magno bubble, or even maybe hoverboards, or maybe other kinds of magnetic levitating bikes? You know, make fast.
Do you see the dome?
Yeah.
Well,
Is that in your vision?
personally, I see the whole thing, so the competition I think is going to lead to innovation and maybe some spin-off technologies, but the whole concept of the Hyperloop and revolutionizing transportation is really going to be thrown out of balance in a few years with the rise of autonomous cars. That's going to change a lot because it's going to clear up traffic in many places. It's really going to change the way that we travel, because people, if you imagine, so let's say you have an electric autonomous car.
Yeah.
You can make it into a bubble, right? You can do whatever you want to. Yeah, because at that point it's no longer a car. It's now a transportation system that has the intelligence to go where it needs to go.
It doesn't need to be intuitive to the user. They just have to get in.
Right. It doesn't even have to look like cars that we're used to now. I mean, it's so with Tesla, they stuck with the car-like design that looks like cars that we're used to, because they didn't want to scare people. But really, the design options and the flexibility with electric cars is phenomenal. And you can, as long as you have a battery and motors and some wheels, you can make it look like whatever you want. So I think in terms of innovation and the way that we travel, I do think that the rise of autonomous cars, the rise of electric vehicles is really going to give, it's going to create an opportunity for people to rethink the way that we travel.
I'm excited for that new Tesla announce next month.
Oh yeah.
I wanna get it.
Oh yeah, for the Model 3, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Dude.
Tesla brothers.
Manifestation.
Are you gonna put down the first 1,000 next month?
Maybe not. Well, I want to see what it looks like. I want
Yeah.
to see the specs, and and then we'll make a decision. But have you guys heard of Tesloop? I'm sorry, we need to wrap up. But oh no, Tesloop is replacing planes with cars. So you can go from LA to Las Vegas for like $84 one way, and they're just taking a Tesla and charging it.
That's awesome.
And
Like a taxi, right?
Yeah, it's like Uber Tesla, and so you can go from LA to Santa Barbara for like $39 or something.
You drive the car yourself?
No, there's a driver.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. But
Kind of like a Tesla Uber.
Well, for now there's a driver, but
Sure,
years
yeah.
True.
Elon recently said that in 2-3 years they're going to have autonomous driving. So if you multiply that by like a factor of 2 or so to get the actual time estimate, that's pretty soon.
Yeah.
Oh, exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I really can't believe it.
Well, guys, it's been really great getting to hear about this new technology and where it's going. Where can people kind of follow along your journey and your project and learn more about what you guys specifically are? How can they get involved?
So for our loop, I would say to look at the our loop Facebook page. That's where we're going to be posting a lot of our updates and whatnot. So.
And UCSB Hyperloop has a website, just ucsbhyperloop.com, and yeah, we have it regularly
Oh, and for the
updated.
the competition as a whole, people can go to the SpaceX subreddit.
What is it?
The SpaceX subreddit, it's reddit.com/r/SpaceX. And they always have the latest up-to-date news on everything SpaceX, including the competition.
I'll have to put that in all of the show notes. Anything else, Paul?
I'm enamored. I'm so grateful that you guys are working on this, because I can't do it. I don't know if we can do it, but I'm glad we have
We need you guys
engineers.
to do it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for joining. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
catch you guys on the next one, hopefully.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. And that's a wrap.